Welcome back, everyone. What do you know? It's World Cleanup Day. That's today, September 20th.
Maybe because it's also a Saturday morning, but don't even mind me. Just
because it's a Saturday morning. Right, so World Cleanup Day, held annually on September 20th, is a global movement to tackle waste crisis by uniting millions of people to conduct cleanup actions, raise awareness about waste, and promote a more sustainable and waste-free world. I don't know how that can happen. The main theme for World Cleanup Day 2025 is tackling textile and fashion waste through circular fashion, highlighting the urgent need to address the massive amount of clothing waste generated annually, and promotes responsible consumption, reuse, and recycling within the fashion
circular fashion
industry.
Is that where we are coming back to? Yes, you were saying.
Since December 2023, the United Nations has officially recognized September 20 as World Cleanup Day, an international day to encourage citizens, governments, and organizations to collaborate on waste management and cleanup efforts. Well, we do have Saturday cleanups in most states across Nigeria.
See what I'm saying?
So, but how effective is that?
See what I'm saying?
Our guest today is Dr. Stella Egbe, the strategic pillar lead biodiversity, climate change, and pollution programs. That's a lengthy, quite a lot. Thank you for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
By the way, I like that.
Thank you.
First of all, circular fashion.
Circular fashion. Like that means maybe things don't go out of fashion.
Wait first.
Okay, I'm not a fashion expert, but I think the circular fashion thing is from an adaptation from the circular economy. And so that's whatever we do in production, it goes back into that cycle. And we have less waste from the production process. And that is one of the main things being highlighted today. And we can adopt it. So I think it has to do with threshold, really. And the world is now, there is now an amber on what is coming out of consumerism in terms of fashion. And I also was really, it's an interesting topic. And looking at it, I realized, okay, fashion trends move on very rapidly. And so you have a lot of work going on in that space. So if we are not feeding it back into the system, then we have a huge amount of waste in our hands from that.
What do fashion designers call those things?
Yeah. So, but what's now with the theme for the year, the World Cleanup Day 2025, talking about textile and fashion waste. What are we looking at here?
So all of it begins from the production. A lot of water goes into the production of textiles. And it's been found that most of this contains chemicals that are toxic to human and the ecosystem space generally. And when released, it goes into landfills and then washes into our waters. And that is the connectivity for humans and every other entity in the ecosystem space. And we now have to raise that awareness for consciousness to go into that production space so that there's going to be this reduction in the amount of raw materials that you're using for such production, and then we can have less waste, because it's not something that is restricted to developing countries or developed world. It's a general problem globally, and so that is why the awareness is very important.
Right, and you know, it's one thing to come up with these celebrations or marking of days. Or setting aside these dates to create awareness about certain issues. But is it just enough to set these dates aside? How much awareness really is being created, especially, you know, in countries, you know, like we are now? People probably just don't know that there's an attempt to want to clean up, or there's an attempt to get people to do this because of the positive effect of, you know, being able to be in line with these, you know, cleanup efforts. Yes,
global efforts. Yeah. So education is one thing, but again, it has to go beyond awareness and to adopting policies, and also modifying policies in response to current realities. We know that in Nigeria, for example, we have a lot of policies as regards to waste management. But what, again, with those policies, are we reviewing them with current trends? And so beyond the general awareness that, goes to the public, there has to be awareness, even at policy level, that reflects that, okay, in the past, when you hear of pollution, for example, for Nigeria, I would say crude oil waste or municipal waste. But then now we know that production of textiles is increasing as population is also increasing. And so it has to transcend beyond just awareness to talking to the real change makers when it comes to policy, because without policy, everything now becomes a message. We know about it, but there's no enforcement.
Interesting that you talk about policy, but perhaps one of the challenges we've had over time, maybe from your experience as well, is that as far as laws and lofty, ingenious policies go, we're very rich, where it's in the enforcement of those policies. You've talked about the people who are critical in this. At the core of these are tailors. Yeah. At the core of these are people who wear clothes, At the core of these are fashion designers and all of those things. So even if we have policy, I'm not sure how much contribution the fashion designers, the cloth makers, the designers, the textile industry, I'm not sure how much input they have in those policies.
Yeah, so everything evolves, and so what we know, we have to now seek how to engage different stakeholders. So the fashion world, for example, this is a conversation to be taken to them. I am not a fashion expert, but I'm also learning through the World Environment Day that fashion can contribute to the impact of climate change, to pollution of underground water. And so seeking ways to engage the fashion industry, the textile production industry, and so they can understand how the impact of what they do contributes to climate change and contributes to our well-being generally is something that has to be done. Like you said, policies are not very easy to implement. And so education and pushing for change in behavior and response to these things is something that we have to be intentional about. And I think that with conversations like this, it's one of the key steps to get that message out there.
I'm not sure we even know how severe the problem is. For instance, I'm looking at information here now that says about the world produces about 92 million tons of textile waste each year, making it one of the biggest environmental challenges today.
Exactly.
Do you think we are all remotely aware of this severity?
Definitely not. The knowledge about that space is very limited, but I'm glad that we're beginning to talk about it, but it's going to move beyond that to engaging and expanding the space where this is discussed. And so people are aware. Also, you'd find that the way we manage this waste is also very important, because burning of textile waste, for example, if you go to the local tailor in your area that finish their work, they will burn. And all of that is also dangerous as well, and it impacts human beings. So when we know that the impact is not just abstract, it's a reality, then people can be more conscious of their contributions towards that.
Let me make it worse. You forgive me, because as I'm getting the data myself, I'm getting an uppercut. That it takes hundreds of years for any clothes made from synthetic fibers like polyester, nylon, and all to decompose.
Yeah.
Now, and it takes about 2,700 liters of water to make a single cotton shirt. Yeah. That's how much water now? That's what one person drinks in 2.5 years.
Exactly. Do you use your shirt, a single shirt, for 2.5 years?
So this is a big problem.
Yes, it is.
It means then it's not just, it shouldn't just be an observance. It should be an annual, year-round campaign.
Sure. So it's good that we are shining the spotlight on textile. There's a whole lot of other waste around us, and we're dealing with it every day. It's just that it's good to actually have the data on, the different things that we're talking about: municipal waste, textile waste, industrial waste, and all of that. And we talk to these issues every day. But it's great that we set aside these days where we raise really information, and we can make people more aware of what the main information is, because it can gear us up to action.
So now that we are here, where do you think we can go from here?
So I think it behoves on everyone, from individuals, proper use of what we have, and so that we are not over-consuming, because that also contributes. So on individual level, managing what we have so that we are not over-consuming and producing too much waste, but also talking to industries as well, especially since this is highlighted. What are the better ways of managing the waste from all of this industrialization efforts? It's a key. We can speak to it, but there is a lot to be done in terms of research and better ways of managing the waste from some of this production process.
And how can we manage, the waste better? We're always talking about let's clean up our environment. We talk about the agencies of government that are responsible, for pickup and disposal of waste. But how do we manage it better?
I'm not a waste management.
I know, but because of
but
about the effects of waste pollution and the damage it can cause, and we know that we can do better in managing the situation. So what suggestions do you have in ensuring that these things are done the way they're supposed to be?
Well, there are countries that are doing it better, and we can borrow from that. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, especially where it works. And one of the main challenges when it comes to waste management is that when you don't separate waste from the source, then you have to use it and make it into landfills, or they return to our waterways and all that. But that initial stage of separating waste from the source is very key, because that way you can then reuse those things that are still useful, or you can recycle, take it back into the production space. And then for those that are non-biodegradable, then they can be disposed in a safe way. Else, if it's together, then you have to destroy land, do sand fields over and over, and then it has its long-term impact.
And instead of keeping things and throwing it away, you can give it away. I have, for instance, like last week, at a personal level, I sent some little girls' dresses to a baby. My daughter wore them over a decade ago.
Exactly.
And I sent them to someone whose child is just about 6 months. And in the picture, it looks as good as new. Like, really, you pass it on.
Exactly.
So I don't know, that's recycling and all that, because hey, in 100 years.
And even thrifting is becoming a thing, so we don't have to.
People used to look down on thrifting.
Exactly.
But now I think it's.
But now we call it thrifting, right? Not second-hand anymore. So maybe it's cooler.
So for me, because maybe I should ask it this way. Do you think this is a national issue or
subnational one?
Or subnational one?
It's global.
Wow.
And
if we're to domesticate it, because I saw yesterday or the day before yesterday, I had reason to look at the Olusosun dump. It is higher than a 2-story building and higher than a 3-story building. And there are people are already putting structures on top of that heap. I know that the Lagos State government is thinking about moving it away from, where it is, maybe to somewhere else. If we check, I'm almost certain that we'll find some textile waste of like maybe 30 or 40 years ago in that heap. So if we're looking at it from that perspective, we'll probably say it's a subnational issue.
Yeah.
Are there location-specific initiatives that can help this initiative to go faster? Or is this something that It's a world standard minimum. For instance, do you think we need waste management initiatives different from what we have in Canada and what we have in Lagos?
So I think generally, states that have huge populations, they produce more waste.
Yeah.
And so you have to now drive an effective system that will work better in those spaces than areas with low population density. So for Lagos, I know that following the story of Lagos, there was an evolution in the Loma story over the years. And I think there's always been a need to respond to current situations and conditions. So I think for states, it will now be to look at how it can be better done. You've had situations, for example, in Lagos where you collect, there are waste collectors going from house to house and all that. But I think one of the biggest challenges is where this ends up. It ends up in landfills. These landfills can't take them. Obviously, we have them around and all that. So there has to be a review of what is happening with that. And this is also, if you go to Port Harcourt, for example, in certain areas, you still find these issues. In waterways, you have huge waste being disposed in waterways. So major cities must evolve more efficient mechanisms towards tackling waste compared to low-density areas. If you go to rural areas, they produce less. The cleaning up system is simpler really compared to what we have here in the metropolis.
Now there is something I saw a little earlier. The traditional model we have in the fashion industry is what they call take, make, dispose. But now you are talking about repair, resell, recycle, and all of that. Yeah. How easy is that journey likely to be?
The ease of doing that is something that one has to start, because if you don't start it, you don't know what the challenges will be. But trying to utilize all that we have at every point that we have it, and then piecemeals from tailoring activities can be converted to something else. Maybe not necessarily clothes, maybe fashion, other fashion pieces. These are simpler things that people can do at the smaller level. But when you then go to the production level, like the textile, because that's where the volume comes in, then a lot of research has to go into how we can refine the process.
How about conscientizing the stakeholders, just as you mentioned earlier? How do we get to that?
Education, mapping your stakeholders, for example, engaging them based on what they can understand at the levels that they can understand. The conversation we're having here, for example, how do we scale it to the associations, for example? How do we scale it to the industries? And this involves also working with relevant agencies of government. Because for government, I don't think that what they always want to do is penalize. If you raise awareness, even in collaboration with government, then government has little to do when it comes to enforcing. And it's easier because the truth is, when it comes to the resources to do this enforcement, that is where government is limited, because it's also not enough. It's never enough when it comes to penalizing.
Right, and we don't know what we're talking about, the theme for this year's celebration. We talked about textile waste. Now, it's a state like Lagos. We can't touch on all states, but, we're here. And I think generates over 1,000 tons of textile waste daily, and that's about 8% of the total daily waste, which is just slightly over 13,000 tons, I think. I think there are plans to ban textile waste from the landfills, so it probably won't be as two-story high anymore as we have observed.
But for now.
But for now, so I mean, how do you think this can be executed? Because there may not be so much control on what people throw out and what gets dumped
to those areas
anyway. So this sorting and whatever it comes down to, but how do we have it in? I do not want to say more developed worlds, because we are enlightened as in Nigeria. We can't keep telling ourselves that we're not developed. Do you understand? So in other climes, you have where they sort, you have bins for everything, so that you know what goes where. How do we make this effective?
All right, I know that we are growing in the single-use plastic, for example, and you have different technologies around, people making it easier for the everyday person to walk to areas, do their exchange, trade by barter sort. And it's come from education and raising awareness across all levels. And I think that this is the way to go about it, taking the awareness to the grassroots level so people can understand. The person that is throwing away textile waste, for example, probably knows that, oh, there's something being done about plastic waste, but they don't know that this can also be done for textile waste. And so that's it. Awareness at all levels is one of the ways to start.
What about this waste to wealth initiative? I mean, it shouldn't just be government alone.
Yeah.
I think if we drive it, a lot of people can actually benefit from it. There was someone some years ago, I think one of our programs, Eco and Africa, traced a guy that, you know, children paid school fees with garbage.
Exactly.
You know, they weigh the value of the garbage, and then the value of it in naira terms.
Yeah.
They collect it, and then your child can stay in class and go to school, and they pay with garbage, not with currency.
Exactly, and even you have a lot of recycling activities where plastic is being used to produce bags and all that, and this can fit into that as well. If you take textile waste and instead of buying new materials to tie things together and all that, a lot of production is coming from that, and people are embracing it. So this is something we can also
and even arts.
channel. Yes, even arts.
I'm
Yeah.
even surprised that this is an issue because the so-called masquerades, they don't use the same. Anyway.
They use pieces of...
It's time for us to go.
Thank you very much for joining us on the program. It was a pleasure having you, Dr. Stella Egbe, Strategic Pillar Lead, Biodiversity, Climate Change and Pollution Programs.
It's
Thank
always
you.
a pleasure. Thank you.
So, when we return, we want to go to another school. We'll find out what we are doing in that school when we return for Lifestyle.